Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic for you today? Let's do it. What's the creepiest thing that you've ever seen that convinced you of the paranormal? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Growing up in Topeka, Kansas, my little brother had an imaginary friend named Jonathan. I remember vividly that my brother would get into trouble for playing in the creek, Soldier's Creek, behind our house, and he always blamed it on Jonathan, saying he asked my brother to go swimming with him. My parents, of course, were insistent that Jonathan wasn't real, and eventually my brother quit seeing him. About 5 or 6 years later, I was taking a journalism class in high school, and we were taking a field trip to the local newspaper, the Topeka Capital Journal. We were given an assignment to search the archives of the newspaper to find an article that was relevant to us personally. I searched my family name and nothing came up. Then I searched for my address. There was an article about a boy that died in Soldier's Creek near 29th and Girard, where my house was located. The boy's name? Jonathan Akins. Lived in my grandmother's house immediately after she passed. Invited friends down to play Dreamcast and have a few beers. Set expectations early on that the only room they were allowed in besides the kitchen and the living room was the bathroom just up the stairs. Was playing UFC on Dreamcast when I saw someone walk from my grandmother's art room to the bathroom. Was less a shadow and more like a dark gray silhouette. Paused the game, looked around, did a quick head count, and went back to playing the game. Around 10 minutes later, I saw the same figure walk from the bathroom to my grandmother's art room. Saw a few people look up the stairs. Paused the game and asked them to describe what they saw. Said they saw someone walk from my bathroom to the room just off the hallway. Looked around, did another head count. Same number of people, and just said it must be my grandmother. People were like, "Your grandma is cool with us partying in her house?" I said, "Oh, well, she died 3 weeks ago, so I don't think she's going to care too much." Freaked a lot of people out, and a few folks left, but I never felt weirded out or anxious about it. Would occasionally see the silhouette after that. Would talk loud about my day when I'd come home from work and just lived my life until I moved out a while later. In the moment, though, I was thinking, what the F is in my house? Person was walking around like they were familiar with the place, and outside of the gatherings, we didn't allow people in our homes. Generally, when I stay in a hotel for work, I sleep on top of the covers because I'm overly warm. Woke up at 1 a.m. to feel something gnawing on my thigh. Not a small bite. It was something with a large mouth around human-sized. Switched the light on in a panic and there was nothing there. Spent the rest of the night under the covers shitting myself and found a human-sized bite mark on my thigh in the shower as I was getting ready for work. Recently stayed in a hotel in Belfast, the Europa, and woke up when the room door opened and someone came into the room and sat on the bed against my back. Couldn't move to roll over and see what or who was for a long time until I convinced myself that I could actually move if I wanted to. When I turned round and put the light on, there obviously wasn't anyone there. But the bed had a depression in the duvet where someone had been sitting. Both incidents freaked me out for days afterwards, but I can't find a rational explanation for either of them. My neighbor died. We thought she had gone on holiday, but I kept having bad dreams. We called the police to do a welfare check and they found her deceased. She had no family wanting to assist with her death as she had mild schizophrenia and shut them out, so it fell on me to identify the body. For the next 2 weeks I had a permanent cold presence around me. I arranged for a small memorial service for her with neighbors that knew her, and we wished her spirit well. Within 1 hour I felt warm again, and felt I had set her free in a dignified manner. After that, amazing things started happening for me, and now in a good place in life. I attribute it to my old neighbor's ghost. My cousin and I lived in a house built during the Civil War, where about 100 yards away the guy, wife, and his daughter were all buried. It was fenced in so the cows didn't stomp up their stones or anything. Well, the grass was getting pretty tall, and him and I jumped the fence to weed eat and wash the stones out of respect for them. We felt like we were getting stung, so we hopped the fence and ran back to the house as we thought there were mud daubers or something chasing us. After all the clear, I checked out his back. We both had scratches spanning our backs. Not enough to break skin, but enough for us to off that area. Also, footsteps running across the hall and the feeling of being watched wasn't pleasant, but that story was the only physical proof. The house is on Old 3L Highway in Falmouth, Kentucky. Creepy, intense, blue-eyed people. I've posted this before, but it's worth sharing again since I still haven't been able to figure it out. I was a sophomore in college. I walked into my math class like any other day and sat in my usual spot, about 4 seats in on the 3rd row. Even though we didn't have assigned seats, there was always a girl sitting 2 seats to the left of me, empty seat between us, and her male friend to her left. They seemed to just be good friends, always laughing, never any reason to give me concern. This day in particular, I sat down, got my spiral and pencil out, and just quietly sat there looking forward to and thinking about what I was going to do after class. Suddenly I got this eerie feeling. I looked up to my left and my heart practically stopped. The girl was staring straight at me, blank face, and her eyes were shining like a bright, piercing electric blue. Shining like lasers. Nothing at all natural. I can't explain accurately. I was basically paralyzed and couldn't move or say anything. I eventually blinked and looked forward, then looked back, and this girl's head was turned back to her friend as he was talking again. About 2 years later, I was with friends and we were driving to a restaurant. Traffic was building up since it was rush hour and were stopped in the right lane. I'm at the back seat and I happened to look up diagonally to the left, and through the windshield I look into the car sitting in the lane next to us. Its back bumper is parallel to our front bumper, so I can see the driver easily. He's turned almost completely around and looking back at me, staring intently. Even from that distance, I could see his eyes were that piercing, bright, laser-like blue, and I froze again. Just like the last incident, I was eventually able to blink, look away, and then immediately look back. The man was turned forward, the light turned green, and we all started moving forward. It's now been about 20 years, and I haven't experienced anything like that again, but it effed with my mind for a while. Not me, but my dad. My dad tells me that when I was a little kid around 4, I went to him and told him we needed to go visit Chile to see my grandpa, his father, because he was going to die that year. They had a really bad relationship, so him and my mom, didn't even talk about Grandpa at home. A few weeks later, my dad got the news from his sister that Grandpa had passed. My dad also tells me that at the same age one day, my mom was at the farmer's market close to our house, and I was in the living room with Dad, where he watched TV and I sat on the floor playing. I suddenly turned to him and go, "Mom is running from bad people, but it's okay, because the store man pulled her inside so she could hide." My dad didn't think much of it until it started to take like a real long time for my mom to come back. Mom didn't have a cell phone or anything, 90s in Brazil, so he waited at home with me until my mom finally arrived hours later, and shaken up, there had been a robbery gone wrong at the bank that was right in front of the farmer's market, and the robbers came out shooting, and everyone in the farmer's market started running and panicking because the robbers were running through the farmer's market and shooting. Mom ran, and a store employee pulled her inside his store before closing the doors. Other people, Dad was freaked out. He always tells this story. Other people from the farmer's market had taken shelter inside. He always tells the story to say that that's when he started believing in the supernatural stuff, because he says, I just stared at him and described what was going on with Mom, and then immediately went back to playing. I have no memory of both of these things. Again, this is one of those where I'm out of my breath, because I haven't really had any real experience like this, so it's good to learn and fascinating to hear your side on all of it. Do you guys believe in some type of spirit or energy that stays here after the physical body passes on? Is it more religious? Is it spiritual? Is it just hope? I don't know. Or just, the banging of a radiator downstairs. I have a pretty odd view on ghosts in that it's more so residual energy left behind by people and not an actual entity. That being said, my childhood home was spooky. You could hear footsteps and see figures walking from room to room so often that it had become normal for us. But one time I was sleeping in my basement and I heard lips parting above my ear like spit crackling, and a voice said, "Get up," really loudly. Scared the actual piss out of me. Never slept down there again. I like to sleep with masks that cover my ears or my pillow over my head now because of it. Oddly, the sound of a mouth opening is still the creepiest part to me. My mom always told me I was being silly and that ghosts aren't real until we moved out. Then she told me she just did that so we wouldn't be scared, and that she'd experienced scary things like that while living there too. I used to work at a house museum. 4 generations have lived in the home between the 1840s, when it was initially built, and 1912, when the last owner died. You can imagine multiple people died in that home between the family who owned and the people who worked for them. I want to point out that I wasn't a believer in the paranormal until I worked there, but everyone on staff at this museum had a weird story of hearing voices or feeling presences. For example, my boss was cleaning part of the house and was humming, and he heard a woman's voice humming along with him from inside the house. Now, the museum was closed, so he went to see if someone had snuck in the house. He ran to where he heard the voice. It stopped. No one was there. Then he heard giggling. I was once alone in my boss's office, which was in the 2nd floor of the house's old granary. I heard 2 men's voices coming from below me. I looked out the window. There was no one. I went downstairs. There was no one. Then voices stopped. One day I was giving a house tour to a couple. In the family parlor was a painting of the patriarch of the family who had owned the farm. I gave my usual spiel with his biographical information, and then I asked the couple if they had any questions. One of them asked, "Yeah, what's that thing behind the guy's head?" I had given dozens of house tours before. This was the first time I had noticed that in painting next to the former owner's head, there was a shrouded figure in black who reached out toward the viewer. Needless to say, this all spooked me. I never went in the house alone. About the main thing I learned is that most people who work in history museums absolutely believe in ghosts. It's a very early morning in December. I think it might have been the week of or just before Christmas. It's a quiet, snowy, one of those very early mornings where no one is outside or even awake in their homes. It's a clear morning with very little clouds, and the moon is still up. From my house to work, it's less than a 10-minute walk across a long courtyard behind a church and right up to the lot. I'm just walking through the snow, listening to music. It feels silly, but I just had the feeling to look up. And right then, coming out of a cloud, is a very bright, warm, spherical light. I've always thought of its size like a quarter or so, held at an arm's length. It's just beautiful, radiant, like a candle glowing without any flickering or sputtering. I'm just lost in its light. It comes out from the cloud and seems to almost stop right there over me. At this point, I start to lose my mind. I'm shouting in this open, snowy field, pointing, just flabbergasted. I fumble with my phone, and it clicked in my mind how shaky cam footage of unintelligible lights existed. Just as I'm starting to take my first steps, it then gently starts to move again, does a very neat U-turn, and disappears over some trees. No noise, no fanfare, nothing but silent, beautiful, and it felt so unattached to the world around it. Trigger warning: suicide. My flatmate died by suicide in an outhouse in the backyard. I got up early to go to work and was standing at the kitchen sink drinking some water, looking out the kitchen window, which faces the outhouse. She had passed away by this point. I vividly remember thinking, what the heck is going on with that outhouse? I can only describe it as a thick black glow emanating from the only window, which I couldn't see anything through, and coming from out of the slightly ajar door. It was so bizarre and from out of the slightly unsettling. I went to work and got a call later that morning with the news. I described it to my mom, and she said that when her brother died in a hiking accident in the 70s, she described looking at the mountain range he was missing in and seeing a black glow around it. I worked in a school. The site was fairly big and the buildings starting to get old, circa 1850 to 1920. The building I was in was used as a World War I hospital for people to recuperate from shell shock. I went in one Saturday to prepare some stuff for the next week and also to walk the dog, as the school's grounds are huge. It's a nice place to walk. My classroom was at the front of the building. At the top of the main stone staircase, there was a much smaller rear staircase, presumably for the help at the back of the building. It was only for the staff, as it was narrow and winding, with larger height between each step. There were 2 classrooms upstairs at the front and 1 at the back. I had been there for a few hours and was alone. I was doing a bit of tidying up, throwing away old things that weren't needed anymore, fixing bits of displays that were looking a bit untidy, that sort of thing. The dog was sleeping after his walk. As I was straightening some reading books, I heard footsteps coming up the rear steps of the building. My first thought was that it was the teacher of the class at the rear of the building coming in to do some prep for the following week. She had children in the school and often came in at the weekend when her children were on the site for sports training or a match. I had emailed her earlier about something or other, so I decided to go and speak to her to let her know. I was there so as not to startle her and to discuss the email. I got about 6 feet from the door to her room and began speaking to kind of announce my presence. Hiya, just wanted to let you know I'm here too. I sent you. As I rounded the corner, I noticed the lights were off. The building has automatic lighting when you walk into her room, and as I walked in, her room was empty. Confused, I walked back out and checked the copier room, which was a small room on the long corridor between the front and back of the building. I thought I would have heard her in there, but guessed I missed her as I walked past. As I opened the door to the copier room, it was obvious she wasn't there. Then I heard the footsteps on the stairs again, right at the top. I poked my head out of the copier room, and there was nothing there, even though the noise was quite clearly coming from exactly where I was looking. Absolutely shit myself. Did the casual but extremely fast walk back to my classroom at the front of the building. The dog was awake and was not pleased. His ears were way back and tail between his legs. I picked up my car keys and exited through the fire door, slamming it behind me. No idea what was going on, but I never popped in to do some weekend prep again. It didn't convince me, but it gives me pause. Fairbridge Village is an old AF school system that trained English and Aboriginal Australian children how to be, well, bluntly, farm labor. They operate today more as a tourist attraction and for horticulture programs. I did one of these programs one year to shut Centrelink up and had to stay there overnight once or twice. It was me, a tiny blonde 20-something woman, and about 4 dudes. Naturally, I slept in a separate room. This was in a little twin cabin thing on site. Anyway, I wake up and think I hear a tape going in the little kitchen thing. I get up to check it. Nope, no water, no tape running. and all the dudes dead asleep. I shrug and turn around. My light is on. I didn't turn it on, huh? I see a shadow, I think, in the door. I am tired and not in the mood. I just say, "Oh, get out of here with that shit," thinking it's one of the dudes messing with me. My room has one way in or out. I walk to the door, no one there. I turn off the light, shut the door, and go right back to sleep. The dudes swore up and down it wasn't them. Until now, I'm still on the fence about it. My friend used to live in a haunted house, so my friend's bedroom was in the attic of the home. There was a storage room beside his bedroom. The door for the storage room was kind of hidden, as in looked just like the wall, but swung open and just had a hook latch to keep it closed. One day there was about 6 of us all piled in his bed just bullshitting, and I was sitting with my back against the door just chilling. Anyways, something kicked or hit the door 3 times really hard from inside of the room. I felt it on my back. I jumped up, opened the door, and looked in, and to all of our surprise, there was nothing in there. We all laughed and shrugged it off, and as I closed the door and hooked the latch, something hit the door so hard that the latch broke and the door flew wide open. We all looked at each other, and I've never seen 6 people run so fast down the stairs. We told his dad that was downstairs what happened. He just said casually, "Yeah, you don't ever go in that room. There's a really angry ghost in there and he'll hurt you." Then he showed us a cut on his head and said I went in there for a box and something hit me in the head. Fucking creepy. This is just one of many experiences I had in that house. I'm not convinced of the paranormal, but I have seen security footage years ago from an old job of a locked and alarmed door, as in never used, just open up on its own. No wind outside, no earthquake, nor anything else we could think of. The manager got an alert and blamed the night crew, but the system showed the door locked. The camera showed it closed. Then the cameras clearly see the bar move and it just opens up. No one outside on camera either. I know there's some normal explanation, but I have no viable ideas. I thought this worker who showed me the footage was messing with me, but it was real management, and it got involved issues because of security, and the manager and owner both baffled and not happy. After we moved into our house, we were cleaning out junk that was in the attic. We found a bunch of old creepy dolls. They were still in pretty good shape, so we kept them for a little bit to see if they were worth anything. During that time, both of us would see a silhouette of a man in a top hat out on the corners of our eyes. Our cat and dog would also react to this. We had several visitors to the house who would mention something about seeing a man in a top hat pass in another room. I don't think he ever did anything. No poltergeist activity or anything, just the silhouette walking around. We found a place to geek and get rid of the dolls, and no one has seen him in the house since. Early 2000s, I worked in a casino whose adjoining hotel apparently had some rooms and a hallway where folks had seen something move through the walls or appear in hallways. This was the Treasury Casino, Brisbane, Australia, if anyone cares. One night shift, probably 3 a.m., I went for a break and one of the kitchen cleaning crew was in the employee dining room and he was visibly upset. Not fooling around, he was genuinely scared. He was a Filipino guy, decent man, friendly and quiet and very Catholic, so I'd never seen him like that. He said he'd been cleaning the hot section in the kitchen when he saw the thing, which he described as gray and vaguely human-shaped, soundlessly appear and move through the kitchen, through the wall, into one of the adjoining haunted rooms. He said he was leaning over the hot plates and it appeared in his right eye peripheral vision, and when he turned at the movement, he saw it. I put this down to it's 3 a.m. We're all tired. And he saw it in his periphery, so probably his eyes are tired and brain is trolling him. About an hour later, I had to go into said spooky room instead on the light and walked in, and it did feel strange in there, and so did the hallway, but it's hard to describe the strangeness. Anyhow, amusingly, any spookiness was ruined by the spare bar fridge humming with its bright Coke sign, and the trays and other standard hospitality stuff stored in there. But Jose refused to work that kitchen on his own on a night shift after that. Make of it what you will, definitely an odd night, but paranormal? I don't know. I'm not sure. This happened about 10 years ago. Never told anyone but my wife. We lived in a pretty old apartment at the time. For context, in our bedroom, we had a Las Vegas memorabilia wall and had souvenirs, etc. on some glass shelves hanging on the wall. One of the things was a metal bucket filled with loose change. I had just built a new PC, so I was playing a game in the bedroom. My wife was closing that night, so she wasn't home. All of a sudden, I heard a massive crash behind me. I damn near had a heart attack. Flew up from my seat, turned around, thinking I'm about to see a random person about to rob or murder me. I see this bucket of change all over the floor. I stood there for what felt like forever, just staring at it in disbelief. I finally worked up the courage to run to the kitchen and grab the biggest knife I could find. Slowly checked every room and closet. My heart was beating out of my chest. I should have just called the police, but I heard nothing else except the bucket and change falling. No doors opening, nothing. So the apartment was completely empty. Still stunned, I cleaned up the bucket and change from the floor. Put it back on the shelf. Got a level out. It's 100% level. Tried sliding it. There's absolutely no way it would slide off the shelf unless someone intentionally knocked it off. Zero wind. All windows are closed. The bucket's too heavy anyway to just blow off. This thing has also been sitting on it just fine for months. I let it go, thinking maybe somehow it was just a fluke. A few weeks passed by, no incident, until one night my wife was closing again. Exact same thing happens. Scared the absolute shit out of me again. Only this time, I knew there was nobody else in the apartment. I still stood there in disbelief. I cleaned it up again, and that bucket never went back on the shelf. I never had any other incidents in that apartment besides these 2 times, and were there for 10 years. The guy that lives in the ground unit killed himself a few months prior to this in the building. Sometimes I wonder if it was him.